Hi everybody, thanks for watching. At this time I'd like to talk about the new movie by Quentin Tarantino called Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I consider myself a Quentin Tarantino fan. I first fell in love with his movies when I saw Pulp Fiction in the theater, and after that my next favorite would probably be Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2, the entire saga. I consider it all one epic, that film. And over the years I've enjoyed other films by Tarantino. I thought in recent years I was getting diminishing returns, I thought, and I don't know, maybe not as excited over his releases as I was in the beginning. Well, this review that I'm going to talk about here hopefully will go twofold. In one way, I want to talk about my feelings on the film itself, but also, in addition to that, maybe give it a little idea to people of what happens when you have certain expectations, and then how you can feel differently about a movie if you see it twice. Now, in this case, as of this recording, I have seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood 2 times, 2 nights in a row. And I'm going to go twofold on this. Let me say at the beginning, there are going to be some spoilers here. I don't know whether I'll call them mini spoilers. I'm going to try not to say too much, but I think it's a good idea that you do not watch this video if you intend to see the movie and don't want something spoiled for you. So whether it's mini spoilers or major, there's going to be spoilers here. Okay, to start with, the idea of this film is that it's set in 1969 in Los Angeles, California. It kind of jumps over a 6-month period. It's really about 2 to 3 days, 2.5, 3 days in the lives of two characters. One of them being played by Leonardo DiCaprio, who is an aging star of television shows. He had a cornball kind of Western show called Bounty Law, which now leaves him actually appearing in the movies over the years since then. But as he's getting older and as things are changing in the movie industry, he's not really getting the roles that he wants, and he's kind of being something of a has-been. And that's kind of plaguing his mind a lot. The other character is his best friend and stunt double, who follows him around everywhere he goes, played by Brad Pitt. And the Brad Pitt character is a lot more at ease. He's happy to be second banana. He's happy to be his boss's personal gopher and right-hand man, so to speak. And he doesn't require as much as Leonardo's character does. So that's the idea, that you're here in 1969 in Hollywood, and the Leonardo DiCaprio character cannot really come to terms with what's going on in his life at this point and how things are changing. Now, the first time I saw the film, the first night, I guess I went in with certain expectations, and that's important. I didn't really know 100% what to expect, but I knew the general framework of the movie. And the first viewing of the movie was not rewarding really at all. But I'll get to that, how I changed my mind in a moment. You have other characters in here from the time, from 1969, such as the character of Sharon Tate, who was a real-life actress, married to upcoming, really hot director at the time, Roman Polanski. And the way this film is set up by Tarantino, he has the character played by Leonardo DiCaprio moving into the home directly across from where Tate and Polanski now live. So while you might say that Leonardo's character's life and fame is going on the downslide now, he's living right next door to a hot director and actress whose careers are going way on the way up. So it's a juxtaposition, which is interesting. Sharon Tate is played by Margot Robbie, and she's a real pretty woman. I don't think she's quite as gorgeous as Sharon Tate, but she's close. That has much to do with it in the long run. But she really is interesting in the way she kind of fills the Sharon Tate character with a lot of upbeat generosity, bubbliness, overall likability and happiness. She's really a beautiful person, as played in the movie by Margot Robbie. And I thought that when I first saw the movie, if you know the history of what happened, and for those who don't, I don't know how you couldn't, but Sharon Tate in real life in August of '69 was murdered, and she was pregnant, and her unborn baby was also murdered uh, by a bunch of crazy hippies that were under the command or control of the now deceased, thank goodness, Charles Manson. So it was a cult. And you knew that was going to be ultimately at the end of this film, and how that was going to happen. So I thought that investing so much time and energy into Margot Robbie's character, Sharon Tate, there was going to be some kind of payoff at the end. And I thought how great that would have been if we were, really getting to like her, spending so much time with her. There's some wonderful scenes of her, including when she goes to a movie theater on her own and discovers that one of her films that she was starring in is playing at this theater, and she asks if she can get in for free because she's the star to see it, and they let her go in. And all this time was spent with her and other characters too. We also spent time with her husband Roman Polanski, and one of the beefs I had with this film originally is that these scenes don't really lead anywhere. They don't really go anywhere. I thought that, which I'll get to a little bit later, if we're going to spend so much time really getting to know and really like and have a fondness for Sharon Tate in the movie, that it would be all the more terrifying and heartbreaking and powerfully disturbing at the end of the film when she is ultimately murdered. I thought that was going to be what happened. I have notes that I refer to here. I just want to make sure I cover everything. The other stars in this film, Bruce Dern makes an appearance, a very brief appearance, in a role that was originally, I didn't know this going in, supposed to have Burt Reynolds in it. But Burt Reynolds died, so that didn't work. Al Pacino, who I really love, has a role in here as a producer. He's the guy that's going to try to get Leonardo DiCaprio's character into movies again, but he just wants to star him in Rome, making what the character says Italian westerns, which are really not something he wants to do. He sees his career going down. Dakota Fanning has a very small part here as Squeaky Fromm, who was one of the Manson clan, and so on. Kurt Russell has a role in here, and I would say also that's one of the things that kind of disturbs me a little bit, that Tarantino seems to use the same actors over and over and over again. And sometimes it's okay, but when it gets to be almost every other film, you're starting to wonder, why can't we get a fresh cast as the main stars in the movie? First time I saw this, I figured that what's really exciting about it, I still maintain even after second view, is the recreation of Hollywood Boulevard. It's amazing how it looks. I mean, all the movie marquees, the bright lights. You almost feel like you're in Las Vegas. It's really wonderful, and all the posters, things that older people like me who see the movie will know, having grown up in the late '60s and '70s. I mean, I was just a child in the late '60s, but it's a time that's now gone. And the best thing I can say about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is that it really just absolutely captures that vibe, that whole feeling. I think a lot of people who weren't around, when you watch this movie, if you're younger, it might make you think, wow, that looks like such a cool time to live in. And, everything's so exciting, Not that it didn't have its bad events too, as we know, but just seems like a happier time. The radio's always playing. I like the soundtrack. There's great songs being played here of the time period. Simon and Garfunkel, the Rolling Stones, Neil Diamond, really, really good songs, and Paul Revere and the Raiders. Tarantino always does a good job of that. So even the first time, I enjoyed the music, the soundtrack, and I enjoyed, more than anything, the visual recreation of those times. I mean, you really feel like, you're in a time machine, a time capsule, and you've stepped back. This movie is a love letter of that time period and those times by director Tarantino. So that's really wonderful. There's a comedy scene in it that's kind of a spoiler here, so you may want to be careful. Bruce Lee, the martial arts expert, gets into a funny brawl confrontation with the Brad Pitt character. And I think that's really a funny moment in the film. Um, Even the first time that I saw it, that really grabbed me very much. What I didn't like the first time was that this film is 2 hours and 40 minutes long, and that in itself is not a problem. There are movies I love that are 3 or 4 hours. I think Ben-Hur, the '59 William Wyler version, at something like 4 hours, is probably the greatest film, in my opinion, that I've ever seen. So it's not the length itself. A movie could be long, but it doesn't, as long as it doesn't feel long. Consequently, there's also another thing I will say. There's movies that I've seen from the periods that I love, horror movies, say old horror movies from the 30s and 40s. Some of them are only 60 minutes, 1 hour, and they drag on. They feel like 5 hours. So it's not the length of the movie. It's what you do with it. How is it edited? How is it utilized? Does it feel as long as it is? Does it feel shorter? The first time I saw this movie, and I thought it dragged really badly. Really thought that you had all these things going on, all these characters, all doing these different experiences and vignettes, but nothing was really coming out of it. They don't lead to anywhere. And I was disappointed in that the first time. Still am a little bit the second time, but more so originally. And I'm thinking, like, for example, there's a scene with Roman Polanski, the director, when he's going out in his yard and he's sitting down and he's enjoying a little breakfast in the morning. And I'm thinking to myself, what the hell does this have to do with anything that comes after? There's nothing with Roman Polanski's character to warrant a scene like that. And a lot of stuff like that. The same thing I would say with the Sharon Tate character, really, as it plays out in the movie. You spend all this time with Sharon. It's okay. You want to get to know these people. I'm a big fan and believer in storytelling and character development. You have to invest a lot of interest and time with characters so that you care about them, you care about what happens to them. That's very important to me. But I just felt in this film that they were meaningless. They didn't go anywhere. There wasn't a payoff, so it kind of was a wasted time with them. I don't think you needed scenes like Roman Polanski going out in his backyard by himself, just enjoying the morning and having it. What's the point in getting into this guy at all if you're not going to do anything with him? That kind of thing. Some of the negative things. There's a scene in there with Charles Manson. Very short scene. I think in the trailer there's another scene that wasn't used. There seems to be a lot of footage that was shot for this movie that was not used ultimately. And the same thing as I say with the Charles Manson scene. There's one really brief scene where he comes to the house of Sharon Tate, asks to speak to somebody, and he moved out, and he says, "Okay, thank you, ma'am," or whatever he says, and he's gone. And why do you even need that scene? There's nothing figures with Charles Manson himself later in the movie. So that kind of stuff like that was extraneous stuff that I didn't really help drive the plot forward. And there isn't much of a plot, especially the first time I saw it. There is not much of a plot here, and I found that the first time this movie to be rather pointless and aimless. And it's just a lot of pretty stuff going on and a lot of characters with their own quirks and their likes and dislikes and their good points and bad points, but nothing really coming together as a cohesive story or plot. So I walked out the first time very disappointed. And the first time there was the end of the movie, and this is going to be a major spoiler, so you might want to tune out for this part. At the end of the movie, I'm expecting that there's going to be the recreation of the tragic Manson murders with the cult butchering Sharon Tate, Abigail Folger, and the other man. At the moment, his name escapes me. But anyway, I thought this kind of stuff was going to happen, and when it didn't happen, and Tarantino actually revised history, I was really disappointed. I knew, because this movie was about Leonardo DiCaprio and about Brad Pitt, I knew that they were going to figure into this somehow. They moved next door. Obviously, he's going to change it to have them interact. But I thought the murders would be intact. So I was disappointed in that the first time. Not so the second time, which I will get to in a bit. But that was my first feeling. I don't think there was any great dialogue in this movie. Usually, Tarantino has a lot of clever dialogue, which we look forward to. And that hasn't been so in this movie, not in recent movies that I've seen. Although I've missed Hateful Eight. I should say right now, as of this video, I have never seen Hateful Eight. That's the one movie of Tarantino's I have yet to see. I saw the others. So I thought that, and I still think, even after second viewing, that Leonardo DiCaprio in this film didn't really suit the role. It's funny, I did some research. The man is 44 years old at the time he shot the film, I believe, somewhere around there. He's in his mid-40s, so he's old enough, I guess. But he's got that baby face, and I just don't see Leonardo DiCaprio as really fitting in a role of a dried-up, old, has-been, washed-out Western TV star. On the other hand, I thought Brad Pitt, who is older and looks better. Brad Pitt has more of the look, I think, of a haggard older star. I could have bought it more, into it more, if Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio had exchanged roles. I wonder how it would have played out if they had different parts. Having said that, Brad Pitt, I loved Brad Pitt in this movie. To me, Brad Pitt was the standout. I loved his performance. I loved his character. I really was like just wanting to hang out with his character. He was such a cool guy. I really enjoyed the Brad Pitt's character of Cliff, the stunt double, who goes his own way and comes up with his own sequences. Other problems I had, there's this wonderfully tense scene, which again is kind of a spoiler here. It's a wonderfully tense scene in the movie. One of the best scenes in the movie that builds a lot of anticipation, where the character of Cliff, the stunt double, Brad Pitt, he goes to takes a hitchhiker home, if you will, to the abandoned Hollywood kind of ranch where they used to film movies and things, where the Manson hippie clan hangs out. And in real life, that's where they hung out. And he goes there, and there's just this wonderful build-up where he wants to talk to the guy who owns this ranch. And apparently all the cult members are very apprehensive about letting him do that. They kind of say, no, well, he's asleep now. You can't talk to him, and don't go there, and all this kind of stuff. And I'm going to go there anyway. I want to. It's a real. What do they want? What are they doing to this guy? Is he still alive? This guy? Did they have him kidnapped? Are they doing that? And to me, that wonderful build-up, the payoff, just is like. When you see the film, what happens at the end of it, all that suspense is built up for nothing. Because the end, when he gets what actually happens at the end of that, it didn't really satisfy. But maybe that's the idea. Quentin Tarantino builds up all this suspense, makes you expect things, and it doesn't pan out the way you thought it was going to do. I would say that there was enough here, even though the first time I was very disappointed. There was enough here to see it the next night. The first night I saw it with my nephew. My nephew loves the film, by the way. He really thinks it's a great film. He gave it an 11 out of 10. He loved the film. I was disappointed the first time. I gave it like 2 out of 4 stars the first time. But the next night, my girlfriend and me decided to see it again. And the second time, I knew what to expect and what not to expect, you see. This is the important thing about seeing movies twice, or more than twice. It's amazing how many things you can notice the second time or third time that you didn't notice the first time. And if you go in with different expectations. This time I went in just enjoying it as a character study of these two friends and what they're going through. And enjoying it just as the love letter picture scene of the time, the nostalgia trip down the memory lane by Quentin Tarantino. And knowing that the ending was going to be what it was. The second time around, I accepted the ending because I figured this is an alternate story with an alternate universe. This is a what-if type of film. What if there were these two guys living next door to the Sharon Tate and her party? And what would happen if they intervened and, again, major spoiler, and those grisly murders never occurred, and spoiler, big spoiler, the Manson hippie clan get their comeuppance, and we all applaud that. What would that be like? The second time, the audience was much more involved too. An audience can really make a difference if the audience is involved. The first time they weren't as involved. The second time I saw it, everybody was laughing a lot more in the right places, cheering in the right places, and it really worked out better. It's a good time. So the second time I came out accepting the end of the movie, and I came out realizing what Tarantino's trying to do. It's not the first time he's done this. If anybody there has seen Inglourious Bastards, and he takes liberties with history and what revises history with a different outcome, you'll know what I'm talking about without revealing that. But so that's what he does at times, Quentin. And I got that. I had different expectations the second time. I went with it, and I took it for the ride he intended me to go on. And the second time, I liked it to the point where I'd give the movie now 3 out of 4 stars as a rating. I don't think even now it's among his best movies. I wouldn't rank this movie in my top 4 or 5, maybe. Who knows? Another couple of views, I may change that. Always put that in there. But I think it's worth seeing. Just have to take it with the right attitude. Don't expect a lot of crazy, all-out action stuff. It is a slow burn, this movie. There is a lot of extraneous stuff in here. I still feel, even after the second viewing, that 2 hours and 40 minutes approximately is way too much for this movie. 2 hours or 2 hours and 10 minutes would have been even more effective, I think. A lot of it's just look at this, look at that. Don't you feel like you're there at 69? Isn't that great? And look at this. There's Steve McQueen over there. There's Mama Cass over there. You know, there's Bruce Lee here. There's Roman Polanski there. You know, check. But they don't really lead to anywhere. A lot of these storylines. Kurt Russell's also back in a small part. I don't know what I should mention that. Kurt Russell is now a standby in Tarantino films too. One thing I want to say is that I think young people today, if you're a teenager or in your 20s, and I wonder how they feel watching a movie like that if they don't know the history. If you don't know the inside references to who they're referring to, if you don't even know the Charles Manson murders, maybe you don't know the history. You don't know about what happened on that fateful night in August of 1969. You might not be able to appreciate this. I wonder how younger audiences who are kind of left in the dark and don't get all of the TV references and so on, I wonder how they would react to this. I wonder if they'd be able to enjoy it as much. It helps to be clued in on everything going on and what the references are all about. Having said that, it's worth seeing. Just take it in the right frame of mind. Don't expect the wrong things like I did the first time. Thank you.